Well, welcome to today's Tech Titans Analytics and Insights Forum, which is presented by Seven Tablets. I'm Jonas Bull with Toro Strategic, and one of the tri-chairs of the Analytics and Insight Forum that plans these programs, and it is my pleasure to be your MC today. Joining me are the tri-chairs of the forum, Steve Parda of the presenting sponsor Seven Tablets, and John West of ASG. They're also the ones who elected me to be the MC today. The Analytics and Insights Forum is one of 9 forums in Tech Titans that bring experts together in each field to advance knowledge and understanding of technology and how it's used. The Analytics and Insights Forum programs feature best use cases that not only show how the technology is being used by business, but also encourages the growth of the analytics community in North Texas. As I mentioned previously, we are pleased to have this year's Analytics and Insights Forum presented by Seven Tablets. And to welcome everyone, make a few opening comments, please welcome the president of Seven Tablets, Shane Long.
Hey, Jonas, thank you. And Jonas, I think they selected you as MC because of the great voice you have. That's why you were selected, just so you know. Pleasure meeting everyone. My name is Shane Long. I'm the president, CEO of Seven Tablets, and one of the principals of the company. As always, it's our pleasure to be associated with Tech Titans, the Analytics Insight Forum. Seven Tablets, we deliver custom software solutions at their digital state-of-the-art digital transformation is our goal. How do we do this? We take a business-first approach with our clients and becoming a business partner, not a technology partner. The company is still a boutique firm with about 100 people total, of developers and designers, business strategists and engineers, focusing mainly on augmented reality, AI, and cloud computing. We work with some incredibly innovative startups, helping launch Dotted, CapitalWorks, Hydrant, Mender, just to name a few of the last 12 to 14 months. And also our client list is the Fortune 500s. Our largest clients, PepsiCo, SiriusXM, PHP, Bell Helicopter, and Lockton Insurance. For us, the digital transformation is a big word. We all have cute definitions for it. I used to have one myself. But at Seven Tablets, we have a much simpler definition of digital transformation. And basically that is a fundamental change in your business that provides a 10x ROI to your bottom line for investment dollars. And that's our goal of the company. Again, you have a great panel today. Look forward to today's discussions and enjoy the session. Thanks, guys.
And thank you, Shane. And thanks to Seven Tablets for being our presenting sponsor for the Analytics and Insights Forum in 2020 again.
Of course.
There are several upcoming events. The Tech Titans Awards Gala on October 23rd. Please check out the details of all the programs on the Tech Titans website at www.techtitans.org. So before we start this program, a quick explanation about how you can ask your questions. I think everybody's kind of familiar with the Zoom platform, but just in case, we are going to use the chat feature to ask questions today. All you need to do is click on the chat icon at the bottom of your screen. Looks like a little text bubble. Write your question in there, and then I'll ask it during the presentation. And we do ask everyone to put yourself on mute during the presentation so we don't have any background noises. Today's presentation is the first in a series of 3 programs that we're in the Analytics and Insights Forum are going to present this fall. Today's presentation will be followed by, well, let's say today's presentation is getting buy-in from the C-suite. It'll be followed by preparing your data on October 15th and concluding on December 3rd with tool selection and tool diligence. So Elon Musk once said, failure is an option here. If things are not failing, you're not innovating enough. And that comment really sets the stage for today's presentation. We all know that analytics projects are hard, they're expensive, and they very often fail to achieve the objectives that were set out originally. So consider this scenario. Your team is constantly behind the 8 ball, searching for, cleansing, preparing data for consumption. The business is not happy. The SLAs and turnaround times required to gather information they need to execute on reports and analytics from one manager don't line up with the other. We know this doesn't give your company a good reason to implement, or does this give your company a good reason to implement a data analytics strategy? How would you go about getting the buy-in from the C-suite for this? So leading our discussion today is Scott Miller, Managing Director for Sendero, and Josh Power, Advanced Analytics and Automation and AI for Oncor. Scott is a management and consulting leader with broad experience in a variety of industry and consulting companies. He's managed performance organizations that supported large enterprise application integration implementation that integrated external and internal applications for a large deregulated retailer. His specialties range from advanced analytics to data governance, enterprise architecture, and much, much more. And he's joined today by Josh Power of Oncor, who has 20 plus years of experience in energy, utilities, travel, retail, financial, startup, and offshore management. His specialties range from digital transformation and software project and program management. So let's begin our program by having each panelist make a few opening remarks about our topic today, and then we can get into the Q&A. So let's start with Scott, please.
Great, thanks for that intro, Jonas. I really appreciate it, and appreciate the Tech Titans organization making this opportunity available, and for John West also bringing this to my attention and getting us involved. So I'm definitely looking forward to a great discussion today, and hopefully it benefits everybody. And so, I think in terms of making a case, I think that, the key thing that I would talk about here in terms of maybe why a lot of times the business cases don't go well or aren't approved is because I think a lot of times technologists focus on way too much on the solution or the what and maybe the how, and they really drill down to such a deep level, and they really aren't focusing on who their audience is, and so and they're not talking in the language that their audience understands, and so I think that if you kind of boil it up and say what are the things that people sometimes what path do they take that's the wrong path, I think it's they focus on the what and the how, and they don't focus as much on the why. And they don't also focus on and understand that these decisions, even though most everybody would hope that business executives and leaders are completely rational, there are emotions that come into play, and you have to really understand what the underlying biases are for organizations and for individuals, and what the history is before you can really effectively put together a business case.
So Josh, any comments to follow that?
Well, yeah, just a couple things, and I'm glad to be here with you guys this afternoon. I'm glad that this is a small little intimate audience. For those of you who don't know me, there's probably only one of you who does, and that's Gary, who has been out at Oncor for a while. My name is Josh Power, and I am officially the capability owner of Advanced Analytics, Automation, AI, and Data Management at Oncor. Unofficially, I tell people that I've got the best job at the best utility in the world. And I really believe that. I work in the technology organization, and I do some really cool things, really making some good progress to help out our customers and improve not only our bottom line, but also how we operate operationally. And I think that one of the things that lots of people are starting to realize as they're doing their digital transformations is using data as an asset and how to best use that data. And I think a lot of companies are just coming to realize that we've got all this data. How can we best use it? One of the things that I like to tell our folks who are kind of new to analytics and trying to wrap their head around what we're trying to do, and I tell people that my team is not the reporting team. We're not nearly doing descriptive and diagnostic analytics. We're pushing the boundaries on predictive and prescriptive analytics. And I asked them, if you could predict one thing that would absolutely change the way that you operate today, what would that one thing be? And let's go solve for that one thing. So like Jonas mentioned a little while ago, failure is going to happen. And I think that that's where I really lean on my team to take heart that failure is going to happen. It's the fail fast mentality. And what we've learned at Oncor, and we've really embraced from a senior leadership perspective, is just the journey. It has value. So even though you may have a couple use cases that fall flat, that doesn't mean that the entire program is a failure at that point in time. I lean back on what kind of famous quote that Thomas Edison said, I haven't learned to fail. I've just learned 10,000 ways that hasn't worked. And that's the approach that we've been taking on our analytics journey at Oncor. So if you get that buy-in at that level from your senior leadership that, hey, this is a journey that we need to embark on, because guys, I guarantee that if you're not doing it, your customers expect you to be doing it and your competitors are doing it. So it's better that you get in the boat earlier rather than later.
Thanks, Josh. So one of the things you mentioned, Scott, you mentioned the concept of that engineers, the solution guys, tend to focus on the tactics of the solution. And then Josh, you mentioned the idea of targeting a specific a specific metric or specific item. How would you marry those two ideas together? Like in terms of, let's say you have a specific item, a specific metric that you would like to see analytics on. How would you sell that up as a broader concept to the outside of the tactics of the specific solution? Do you maybe expand on that, please?
Is that to me or to Josh first?
Oh, well, let's keep with the principle
Okay,
that we started. And
the order. We're not going to go round robin. Okay. So I think that you have to be able to create those linkages between the actual the business outcome, right? What is it that the business leader, the C-level person is trying to achieve, and how does that tie back to their strategic pillars or objectives? What are the things that are going to move the needle for that organization? So for a company like that Josh is with at Oncor, it's not as much about, they're a regulated business, so they're focused more on safety, reliability, right, and compliance, and likely other things, but those are some of the key things. But you look at another organization like some of our clients that are in, for example, they're selling health insurance. They're focused on driving sales revenue and new customer acquisition and customer retention, right? And so what are those key metrics that matter to the business? And then how do you identify how you can create analytic outputs and then tie that together with the business actions? And so what are the business actions that are going to leverage the analytic outputs that are going to drive and move the needle? And it's not an easy thing. I mean, you have to make assumptions in a lot of cases, but you have to be able to, if you don't create those linkages, you're not going to gain the attention of those executive stakeholders. So that's one of the key things I would say you need to do.
I definitely agree with you there, Scott. I think that what I've found is developing the backlog is fairly easy. As you start kind of expanding out your knowledge and your evangelical approach to analytics throughout an organization, you're going to come up with people who say, hey, I've got this great idea, we'll add it to the backlog, but tying those use cases to not necessarily ROI, but really to that value that you were mentioning, Scott, towards those strategic objectives is really important. And that's what really grabs the attention of C-level type folks is, again, what's going to move the needle? Why should we invest in this? And if you're able to align your use cases to those values, I think you're going to get their attention and you'll probably get the buy-in to continue forward.
Yeah, I'll just quickly add one more item to that. I mean, try to identify what really is going to help that person individually, whatever try to identify the C-level person that's going to be a champion, and then trying to help them understand how it's going to help their career and help them progress potentially. And so I think that also is a key element. I mean, everybody is looking for how they can improve, their career standing, and I think that's another key element to it.
Yeah.
So one of the things that it seems like I'm hearing there is that the technical people and the engineers need to pay attention to personalities, not only of their management and executives, but of the company itself in terms of what drives the company and what motivates the individuals. Is that a correct assumption?
I think so. I mean, I think that, you know, we see consistent themes, and you mentioned some of these in your intro. I mean, there's almost every company that has kind of grown organically or even through acquisition, they reach these inflection points where they've created siloed data, right? And so that you always hear those things. You have siloed data, and then what that creates is a couple of symptoms, which are you can't access the data. So the business people that need the data to be able to identify patterns and see key themes in the direction of the operations of the business, they can't get access to the data. They also have multiple copies of the same data, right? And so it's the pain. You got to identify what are those pain areas that are driving emotion with those executives, because they're feeling the pain. And then you tie your solutions and your proposal to address those pain areas.
It's got interesting that you mentioned silo data, and I think every organization has this challenge at some level. It's been amazing to me to witness just what can happen if you take those disparate data sources and you start combining them together and looking at them in ways you didn't think was possible before. A lot of the analytic, and I'm using that in quotes, solutions that we've generated over the years is as simple as just combining a couple of data sets and looking at it in a different way. And people just look at it with a big aha moment. And then it just starts snowballing from there. So I would not discount the value that you get from breaking down those data silos if you see them.
Okay, almost forgot to hit my unmute button. I think with the small number of people that we have here, it might be a good idea to let you go off mute and instead of trying to use the chat, and that might make things a little bit more personal and get more conversation going. In the meantime, I would say one question we have had come up is how do you get the C-suite to understand there is an initial investment that needs to be made to start the journey? In other words, how to be patient to get the results.
Josh, you want me to go first on that one?
Well, the first thing thanks Steve for the question. I think the first thing that popped out of my head was you mentioned it in your question. It's an investment. So focus in on the investment piece of the puzzle. I believe that anything that's innovative related is an investment at the end of the day. So keep focusing on the investment side and make sure that people realize that, yeah, it is going to be a journey. You're right. Those are the two words that I keep saying over and over again, investment and journey. It will pay off. Along the way, when you start identifying your use cases, look for those ones that if you plot them in a quadrant of feasibility and value, the low-hanging fruit, the stuff that's highly feasible, high value. And once you get the first wins, you're going to see some magic happen. People are going to just want to build on that and continue with that investment.
Yeah, I agree 100% with what Josh is saying. I think that once you see one, like if you identify that use case and it's identified within a division or a departmental area, and that department starts to see success from that, it starts to spread within the peer group, within that leader in that functional area, and then they want to jump in. And so a lot of times, sometimes people may not want to be that bleeding edge person that's jumping out and doing it first. And so I think that that's a critical element to be able to find people that can see the vision and, you know, helping you drive that vision as well and tie it back to the strategic objectives for the organization, but then be that kind of that first person to take the chance and get involved and start that journey. And then like Josh said, it's definitely a bottoms up type of scenario at that point. Then most people that are peers of that specific individual are going to see that success, and they're going to want to have some of the same success. So they're going to jump on board.
Yeah, 100%. You're going to see a keeping up with the Joneses type of effect, and then your challenge will shift between what did our initial investment give us in terms of tools, technology, people to deliver on some of these use cases. And then how do we take it to the next level? How can we deliver more? Because you're going to start getting really good use cases, and people are going to say, hey, you did so-and-so for this department, this piece of the organization. I want something similar. Help me get there. That's going to be the challenge next.
sometimes when you're putting together these business cases and pitches, one effective way that we've seen with some of our clients is to use a proof of value concept, right? So instead of saying this is a proof of concept, which doesn't really get you anything, it may just prove that the solution may address something. To Josh's point, do a proof of value. Spend the time to really understand what are the use cases and patterns that are going to address specific areas that are going to move the needle from either an effectiveness, meaning top line, revenue driving new revenue or new markets or innovation, or efficiency, or both. If you can find a use case that will address both effectiveness and efficiency, I think that those are the best use cases to then create a proof of value around, and you time box that. You say we're gonna spend 3 months. We're gonna address this specific use case. We're gonna get as far as we can. Here's the cost associated with that. It's a limited cost. It's not an unlimited cost. And then at the end of that, you say, have we seen enough that's going to help us determine, is this solution going to help us move forward and maybe expand this into other areas?
I like the concept of a proof of value. One of the things that I've learned as well is that by nature, analytics is highly iterative in nature. So I'm sure everybody on this presentation has written a report in their day. Well, you probably have realized that reports are never waterfall in nature, right? So just take that up to the next level. If you think of analytics as just a really fancy report, it's constantly changing. Even after you're in production, it never stops being iterative because you've always started to retrain your models, et cetera. So being able to communicate that the proof of value is just the first step in the process, but you're going to continue to improve, you're going to continue to see the value increase from that point forward is important as well.
So one of the things I took away from that, or analogies I drew from that, was that getting the buy-in and getting the initial proof of value funded, being like an investment is very much like an investment if you've come from the startup world, where getting that initial investment, getting that initial customer is very difficult. Once you got the first one, it starts getting easier and easier. Because, as you say, everybody wants to get on board. And Josh, you mentioned some good things about time boxing. And one of the things that I have personally seen is talking about proof of value is it's very important to make sure that there is actually some value in what you prove, that you're not just renaming a proof of concept to a proof of value, that there's actually a value, something tangible that can be seen at the end of that. Do I have any other questions? Let's like I said, let's go ahead and let everybody unmute if you have a question.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the concept of finding a business case that you can attach this to. How do you recommend pitching more of a data science approach, where you may not know the use case up front, but there's value in getting the data together and running the algorithms on it?
The kind of black box type of project.
Right.
Scott, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so I think, Gary, I mean, that's a really great question. I mean, I think that those are when you start talking about the linkages between the business strategy and strategic pillars and the analytics, it's a harder get there. It's harder to make those connections. And I think that really what you have to do in those cases is you have to demonstrate what is best practice for organizations within your industry and your segment, and say, this is, if we don't do this, you almost have to look at it like an R&D, right? It's part of your overall R&D budget expenditure. It's, if you're not doing these things, if you're not failing fast to identify new ways to leverage and use data to drive what I'm calling that effectiveness. Because usually the companies that I've seen that are doing the true data science stuff are the ones that are in that spectrum of they're companies that are they're either digital natives or they're highly digital companies that are moving forward, and a big part of their business operations has to be leveraging data to drive what I call effectiveness, right? It's that top line revenue and profit for that organization. And so, really in those cases, it's almost like these are table stakes. We have to have this. Here's why. Here's what our competitors are doing. So that's part of the business case. Here's what our competitors are doing. Here's how they're leveraging data, at least that we have visibility into. Here's what we need to do to be able to keep up, right? And so it's almost like a table stakes kind of conversation in that regard. But I think you can also take the same approach, kind of a bimodal approach, where you can look at it from that perspective and make that business case, and drive some of those discussions. But also, you can create somewhat of a proof of value data science lab, right? And so, build out a lab, and then identify some use cases that you can run through that lab, that data science lab, to then generate some value, and then start to expand that.
And Gary, just one more kind of point to that. The nice part about the day and age that we live in is C-suite people are getting constantly bombarded with buzzwords in terms of AI, machine learning, big data platform, all this kind of stuff, right? So the interest is there. And I think a lot of them are probably operating a little bit scared, thinking, and I've had some in the past ask me, should I be doing this? What should I be looking at? So being able to take advantage of the fact that there is interest and moving forward with it is perfect kind of timing at this point. It's not that we're in, 15 years ago when it was bleeding edge technology. A lot of this stuff is, while it's moving really, really fast right now, the interest is there, and there's a lot of talk amongst everybody's peers at the C-suite level about what they're doing and why aren't they doing it, that kind of thing. So to me, I see a lot of questions on the other side about, hey, why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we moving faster? Because you get the advertising angle of it, right? You can't, like, if y'all watched the US Open last weekend, every other commercial was about something AI-ish. Well, what is that? That's because it's such a hot topic right now. So that's the challenge that at least I'm facing with boots on the ground people.
And Deloitte had that AR, augmented reality app that they had too, which was part of that too.
Yeah. So
yeah, I would agree, John.
Like that into reality. That's the other thing that you're going to have challenges with is, yeah, I get the advertising piece, but real world, here's what it really means to do machine learning type stuff.
Mm-hmm. And I think when you're talking about, kind of black box theory, those kind of things, that's actually an opportunity for you to go and take initiative and say, look, I've taken a data set that's readily available. I've dug some information out of it, and, really with just a shoestring budget and myself, I found this one little nugget, right? And if you can go to them with that nugget and make that part of your use case, what else could I do if I had resources, right? What else could I find here? If you could find just one little piece of hanging fruit, like was mentioned earlier, I think that would help you go in and build that case and say, hey, let's expand on this. Let's do a little more. And then you take that iterative approach that these guys talked about, and all right, now we've gone to the next step and I found more. Give me some more budget, right? And I can find some more, right? You just kind of keep iterating through it. I think that's a good opportunity for an individual to shine, right, in that particular case.
I'm glad you mentioned budget, Steve, because at some level, this isn't necessarily a budget problem, because even if you had all the budget in the world, if you didn't have a strategy on how you're going to get those resources, how you're going to get that knowledge, you've got to be able to complement your functional knowledge with your technical knowledge, and how do you bridge that gap? There's a lot to overcome when you just talk about, hey, I've got buy-in, now what? It's that next step that's really a challenge. I tell people that if you look at the, at least in my space, if you look at the top 10 technical skills that have been in demand over the last couple of years, at whatever list you look at least 5 or 6 of them live in my organization. And if you think that's not my number one challenge, you're mistaken. That absolutely is. You just can't throw bodies at this problem. It's difficult to do.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah, we're looking for some of those core skills for the people that we hire too, and making sure that they have the base level of analytics capabilities and skills as we're looking to hire them, and then developing those once they get on board. So for our organization, we were definitely having keeping those type of capabilities and skill sets at a premium.
Is there a role for, or should the data science, data engineering people, the technical organizations, should they have a handle on corporate strategy? Does that have a role in getting buy-in with the C-suite?
Yeah, I believe that they need to be able to help identify and be a part of the overall analytics strategy development. And so that kind of ties into what I think Josh was talking about. You can't just say we're gonna put together a pitch or a proposal and a business case for one-offs. You have to really have a holistic analytics strategy that ties in all the things that are important to make that happen, right? And so you certainly have technology solutions, but you have to have the people and the skills, to his point as well, and the fact that those are in high demand. It makes it extremely difficult to recruit, hire, and retain those people because everybody else is looking to recruit, hire, and retain those people. But you also have to have adoption. You have to have a strategy around, okay, how are we going to make this stick, right? Because it's like, and that's no different than any other technology or solution, ERP or whatever. You have to be able to have a holistic approach for how you're going to implement the solutions and how you're going to stage that in terms of phases throughout a period of time, and then how you're going to build up that organization. In some cases, organizations are creating whole separate organizations and having a chief data officer, right? And so that's a pretty, I think that's not common yet, but I think you're seeing a lot more organizations go that path. But you have to have a holistic strategy, and then your business case has to align with that overall strategy.
I think that one of the things that pure data science people can bring to the table that traditional IT people may not is, it's a lot of in-depth knowledge about data and statistics and algorithms and that kind of stuff. But the ones that I've been around are awfully blunt with me, even at the leadership level. They'll tell me when something's a bad idea or when something's wrong or isn't going to happen. So being able to take advantage of their bluntness, because they are scientists at the end of the day, can be helpful in your overall strategy. One of the things that we need to realize is, if we've developed some of these use cases, so let's say we have an ML algorithm out there running for a little while, is make sure that it keeps delivering that value. If it's lost its value, if you don't have the champion for that use case anymore, cut the cord. It's too expensive to keep running. Being able to just walk away from some of these things, knowing, hey, I've extracted all the value I've got out of this one, let's just let it die on the vine, is a good thing to do. And you have to always have the end of every one of these use cases in mind as well, because at some point they're going to become not worthwhile of the time and effort it takes to maintain it. Because I think a lot of people fail to realize the investment piece isn't just the initial investment of getting something developed to begin with. There's an ongoing cost, like there is with any other technology solution with this. And it's very, very expensive to keep some of these use cases running as well, because again, you're still dealing with the same high demand, high expensive skill set to keep it running.
Josh, do you have any specific use cases in mind that you've implemented recently that successful, or ones that weren't successful, but maybe you learned a lesson from it that you could share?
Yeah, I mean, I can run through. I wrote a list of some of the use cases right before I joined the call. So I don't know how many of y'all are familiar with utilities, so I'll keep it non-utility specific if I can. So one of our big successful use cases we've run pretty recently over the past year has been what a lot of people are doing is a customer 360 use case. Trying to do some next best action for our customers, sentiment analysis, and y'all are probably, if not all Oncor customers, you're probably close to it. I'm guessing everybody lives in North Texas here. But our customers are expecting us to be highly accurate with our estimated time of restorations. So customer analytics is, a lot of companies are starting to focus on the customer piece of the puzzle. We do a lot of traditional data science around our assets. Oncor has about 18 million assets in the field. So that's everything from stuff in substations, transformers, poles, wires, all that kind of stuff. So just asset health is traditional data science use cases that we've had a lot of success with. Predicting failures of routers, transformers, that kind of stuff. And lots and lots of forecasting. So traditional forecasting done linear regression type of approaches in SAS or Excel for that matter, taking it to the next level of using some real advanced analytics use cases or techniques for forecasting. Oncor has 3.7-ish million meters in our service territory, and we've got an analytics case that's trying to predict consumption down to the meter level. And that's really, really difficult. That's at scale. I mean, you have to do that with some massive horsepower to be successful there. It's easy for me to do it in customer classes or geography, but if I want to be able to say, Alan and Gary live next to each other, their houses are basically the same square footage, but their usage is different. What makes their usage different? It's their sensitivity to temperature changes. It's when they leave the house in the day. So being able to get that level of forecasting is really, really important for us because what we're really after is just grid reliability and keeping our rates for our customers as low as possible. So those are some of our successes. And along the same lines, we've got failures in every single one of those categories as well. So that's when I started off saying we haven't necessarily learned how to fail all the time, but we've just learned what hasn't worked and we just keep at it because we believe that some of those use cases will absolutely pay off for us at the end of the day.
And that's where that investment angle comes in. It's not that every one of these is going to be a home run, but
Yep.
you have to go through the process to find them, right?
Yep, I've got a senior VP who says a bunch of home runs is nice, but a lot of singles will win you the game. So we're trying to hit a lot of singles with some of these use cases.
You know, I think it's pretty interesting. It's a point that you touched on a few minutes ago. Don't look at these use cases as a long-term, this is how we do business kind of thing, right? There's really a time frame for that use case or a lifespan, right? A use by date, and keep that in mind and make sure that that's something that's communicated as well, right? Here's the value that we expect to get out of this use case, and then we're going to move on to the next, right? We're going to go find something else that's going to help us either serve our customers better, make us more money, or get us more customers, right? I think that's something that's lost on a lot of people entering these things, right? Is that there is a use by date.
Yeah, I think it's important to have like a framework around that, Steve, and you know, have some structure and governance around that to be able to make the hard decisions, right? Because you know, some people may get invested in a specific use case or proof of value, and you have to really have a governance structure to make sure that you're making those decisions on what really is adding value and are you achieving what was expected. A lot of times you are surprised and you achieve different results, but still positive results, maybe in a different direction, right? So I think that those are some of the silver linings that sometimes come out of those proof of values.
One of the things that I've found that's helped in that process is every use case that we do, we assign what we call a champion to. And this isn't necessarily somebody they're definitely not in the C-suite. They're probably not even a director. There's somebody who really understands that use case and understands the value and can see the value of it. And I encourage them to take ownership of it. They're the absolute champion. They're gonna be advocating for it. They're going to prove its value. They're going to make sure that it's advertised appropriately. And on the flip side, once the value has lost, whether that's beginning in the process or towards the end of its lifespan, they're the person who's going to be able to pull the plug and say, you know what, this isn't working out for us. And there's going to be no shame in that as well. We all go in and saying, hey, not everything's going to work, and that's perfectly fine as well.
So is that champion? Is that usually a subject matter expert or something like that?
Yeah, subject matter expert. What I like to identify is somebody with a real stake in the game. You know, they have some kind of vested interest in the success or failure of that particular use case.
That fits the framework that we've used in the past. We'd like to have a subject matter expert that's sort of the champion, and you know, and bringing it back to our subject today, an executive level sponsor that can really pull the levers that need to be pulled when they need to be pulled.
You know, I think one of the things that we haven't touched upon today, maybe in a roundabout way, what about adversaries? You know, what happens when you run into an adversary that is really influential in the organization? You know, what are some tips and tricks and strategies to maybe getting around those adversaries?
That's a great point. I mean, I think that there's a lot of times there's inhibitors that come up when you're trying to pitch a business case to an executive audience. And I think that the key thing there is it's kind of like a lawyer when going into a court of law. They already know the answers to the questions before they ask them, right? And so I think that, you know, trying to do as much diligence around what you know, what's happened in the past, right? Have there been other initiatives historically that have occurred that failed, and why did they fail? And what were the, you know, who was involved, and who were the champions, and trying to just identify those key elements before you walk into that discussion. But then also building relationships with the people that you maybe identify that may be objectors, right? That may have concerns or issues, and then trying to understand them better, and then be able to come up with approaches that address their specific concerns or concerns and issues.
Yeah, I try to ignore those naysayers, honestly. That's been my approach. Right or wrong, that's my approach.
It's easy to do until they have a lot of influence.
So we have a question from Jake Mason. It says, earlier enterprise strategy was mentioned, and some companies are now getting there. But as an example, analytics are occurring in silos, say marketing or some other. But what are some of the big rocks that need to occur to move the enterprise model and pitfalls to get there?
I think, you know, in some cases, you know, I mentioned earlier the chief data officer. I think you need to have that stakeholder at the executive level that understands the importance of data and analytics, and how that can actually, you know, the fact that it's in a lot of cases table stakes, but also can help move the needle and improving effectiveness and driving top line and bottom line results for the organization. You know, so I think that, you know, if you don't have that, it is, and you don't have any constraints around individual organizations building their own fiefdoms around this, and I think that becomes an extreme challenge. And I think that you have to have somebody at an executive level that can enforce the fact that, you know, this is something that's needed, and there needs to be there needs to be an organization that provides this. I think that where people have failed in the past is that they've done that within the IT organization, and then the IT organization becomes the bottleneck, and then that creates a challenge when there's a significant demand for data and analytics, and then there's a lack of access or throughput of analytics coming through that organization. So you've seen a lot of more hybrid organizations where it's a kind of a partnership between the business functional teams and the data and analytics teams within the IT organization to support the needs of the organization, and make sure that access is readily available, but then also the tools and capabilities of those or people in those organizations that are kind of part of that hybrid functional organization are supported in the right way, so they can drive the analytics that are required for the business.
Yeah, the tools are the big thing there, right? A lot of times when I see organizations that are siloed like that, it's because marketing got tired of waiting for something, so they went and purchased a tool, and they've got data that's sitting there that nobody else has access to, right? So then you got to really back up and say, okay, now not only is this an analytics project, it's an IT project, because do we have to go get a product like, Snowflake or whatever, Redshift or whatever it might be, so that we can get all of our data accessible for more, deep type of predictive or prescriptive analytics. And so, yeah, a lot of times you just got to back up one step when you're really siloed like that and say, okay, what do we have to do from a tools perspective first? Let's get that approved. And then once we have the tools in place, then we can start to strategize on, how can we use that data that's available? Of course, first starting with cleansing all of that data, which by the way is our next topic, right? Data governance and data management.
Yeah, I think going back to some of the common things that we see at our clients, or the access is a huge one, and throughput and demand management, but also understanding where the data came from, and so that the lineage of the data and the quality of the data is tied to that. But then there's duplication of data too, and understanding which is the right, the gold source of that data. And so all of those things, in my opinion, are a symptom of the behaviors of organizations that go out and create their own separate, silo analytics groups, and there's no controls on what solutions that they acquire. And so you have duplication and redundancy of technology solutions and infrastructure and storage and all of that, and it just creates a situation where chaos can be introduced, and you don't have alignment around what really you're trying to do to achieve the organization's goals.
Yeah, you guys are touching on shadow IT, and I think that's a really good point to make. I think you do have to have your executive buy-in, but in my opinion, I think the role of IT is definitely changing. I see a lot of organizations being IT is an enabling organization versus having the control over some of these things. So how can we, as an IT organization, help you, give you some expertise, make sure you got the platform, and then in a governed fashion. Steve, you mentioned data management, data governance, and of all of the activities that I'm responsible for, what keep me up at night is what you just mentioned. It's data management and data governance, and making sure that we're doing things secure, and at the same time, making sure that the data is accessible for people to be innovative along the process. It's a real challenge that people just assume happens. Those of us who are in IT know that none of that just happens.
I agree, and I think that's if you're talking about building a business case for introducing data governance, that's the hardest one to sell, right? Because who likes governance, right? Come on. So it's just very difficult to build a case and have direct benefits associated with it. It's just part of what you have to do if you want to have an effective data analytics organization and solution.
It's not sexy.
Yeah.
It's
not
time consuming, and it's expensive,
yeah.
but highly necessary. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a common scenario we see among our clients. And one of my favorite quotes from this chief data officer of a insurance carrier said that there's a real threat, a real danger to the business if you allow these silos, the analytics that are driving decisions based upon data that no one can really vouch for, and that you're making operational decisions or pivoting the business based upon analytics that are driven by a data that has a mysterious background. It's truly a danger to the company, and it might sound like a sort of an exaggeration, but it's true, and that's why they spend so much time studying the provenance of that data and even watermarking it so that they know that it's data they can trust. So when it turns up in a report, decisions can be made in a trusted way. So that's part of the process, like you said, and it's hard.
we see a lot of push for explainable AI right now. And unfortunately, a lot of times we can't even explain our data, much less the decisions our AI is making.
Yeah, I wish somebody would define AI for me at some point in time. It means different things to different people. And it's the cure to everything too, by the way.
Just like big data, right?
Yeah, one man's big data is that's not even barely a data set.
It is all relative, yes.
I think
do
it'd
we
be
have
fair.
any other? Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, do we have any other questions from others in the group? No? All right. Well, Jonas, you want to go ahead and kind of start wrapping everything up for us? I think we're getting pretty close to the end of our time. If nobody else has any other questions or comments.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I think we can say that we had a great conversation today, and we appreciate Scott and Josh for taking the time to be with us today and engaging in this discussion on a topic that we can certainly relate to. As I mentioned earlier, Tech Titans has a number of upcoming events, programs from the Blockchain Forum, Cybersecurity Forum, and the Tech Industry Luncheon are all on the calendar. Remember that we have the second of this three-part series, Preparing Your Data, which we'll talk about data governance and provenance on October 15th. You can find all the information for this on all Tech Titans events on www.techtitans.org. So thanks to everyone for attending today's Analytics and Insights presentation. And I think we are adjourned.
Thank you very much, Josh. Thank you very much, Scott. Appreciate your contribution.
Thanks, Josh and Scott. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much. It's a great conversation.
Thank you all.
Great discussion today. Thanks so much.
Thank you,
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
One.
Good seeing you,
Have a great
Scott.
day.